Have you ever seen a real-life Starship before? Well, here you go. It's a little underwhelming, isn't it? And oddly familiar to the people who saw my Donnie at Daytona videos. This video is called Winged Being has came out of this starship around the 20-second mark. It's 17 minutes long, so it's good the title tells us what we're supposed to be looking for. Especially since once you see this winged being, you'll probably understand why figuring out which part of this is supposed to be interesting might be difficult.
That's rather interesting, because if I go to the side, this has this crease in it like this. We're just going to look at it like this.
There it was already, the winged being this entire 17-minute video is named after. Did you miss it? I did the first time. I think Gina did too. Here it is again, slower. So, any guesses? Any at all? Whatever could it be? Spoiler alert, it's a sideways moondragon shapeshifter.
And if you're just now tuning in, well, I'm just now starting this live video of the star in the southern sky. You can see it is the same one as the last time.
Nobody can see that, Gina. Even if it was in focus, you can't identify a solitary star just by looking at it in a YouTube video. It's a point light source. One is going to look pretty much like the other. But on top of that, this one's so out of focus, you can't even see it's a star at all, let alone what it looks like. Oh, and for the record, I did not expect to be talking about out of focus stars again so soon after Donnie, but this isn't really about the star, mostly.
I've got a low internet connection again. I don't know what is happening.
Could be a lot of things. Signal interference, some kind of router problem, a hiccup in the service on your provider's end. If I were there using your equipment, I could probably make a decent educated guess, but from over here it's pretty much impossible. Suffice it to say, these things happen from time to time to everybody at pretty much random times. The internet is complicated. There's a lot of things that can go wrong.
Why are they doing this to me? It says low internet connection automatically as somebody is jamming my internet.
Sure, or the Reptoid hacker army's out to get you. Fine, whatever. Next you're gonna tell me they're messing with the certificates on your website Amazon.com and making you give your passwords to tech support scammers.
Okay, now we got, now we have 5G. I don't know how this keeps getting on to, this keeps getting on the extended Wi-Fi, and I really don't like it.
Why not? You think that'd be better. Saves you data. Probably faster too. That's why phones tend to try to use Wi-Fi when it's available and turned on. Unless your Wi-Fi signal is worse than your 5G signal, in which case we might have just found the culprit behind the jamming. Try just turning off Wi-Fi, it'll use mobile data instead, you'll be good. It's odd though, I thought conspiracy types didn't like 5G these days. EZet had a video about that, people should watch that, and while I was making my last video about the jet fuel, that was one of the things I saw brought up endlessly. Even your commenters seem to be towing the conspiracy party line on this. But you're not, so there's hope for you yet, it seems. Maybe you'll even pull a Donnie and actually learn how to focus your telescope.
If I shrink this down and move it like this, I'm just seeing what happens.
Okay, well, the crease went away because you moved it to a different part of your field of view, and the shape changed for the same reason. I'll get into all that in more detail in a few minutes.
So I don't know if the viewer thing on here causes it to be obscured like that or not.
The viewer thing. Do you mean the eyepiece, or?
Gina, let's shrink it back down. Well, I guess it doesn't. I think,
I have no idea what you're talking about, but let's talk about what you've established so far. So this so-called crease across the Starship goes away when you move your telescope. Therefore, that's something internal to your telescope, not a feature of the star. I'll show you exactly what it is in a bit. And the shape of the Starship also changes when you move your telescope, so that shape is also not a representation of what's actually in the sky, unless you think your telescope is some kind of Starship transforming magic wand. I think we can at least agree on that. At least I hope we can, or we're gonna get nowhere.
Look at that. Watch. Move it like this, and I'm gonna sit there and do it like this. I'm sorry, I'm playing around with this. Okay, I'm not touching it. I'm not gonna touch it. I'm not touching it at all. Let's see if I can enlarge it a tad bit. I'm not touching it, so you're gonna watch it go across the screen. And the reason I think it goes across the screen is because it's the stars are shifting to the west.
Or the Earth is... oh, never mind. It amounts to the same thing visually.
Oh, my phone about fell. Not my phone. I have a great big spotlight. I did not do that. You all saw that move. I didn't do that. It's doing it on its own.
What just happened there? If I understand correctly, you knocked the scope and said your spotlight almost fell, and now you're insisting to your audience that the telescope knocked itself. Come on now, who's gonna fall for that? Oh, right.
Okay, now this is it's doing it on its own.
Wait, are you talking about the big movement you seem so surprised by, or just that constant movement towards the bottom left? I thought the former, but now it sounds more like the latter, even though you've already explained that reasonably accurately, and so you shouldn't be surprised about it at all. Your reaction doesn't make sense for either of them, so I don't know.
Well, isn't that neat? This is doing it on its own.
Yes, which you explained 1 minute ago as a result of the stars moving across the sky. And you're right, that's exactly why it is, except of course that the Earth is moving and not the stars, but that's really beside the point. But despite you knowing that, you're surprised by it? This is a really odd video.
And this is quite possibly a full circled orb, like it looked kind of like an orb because of this line. I don't know why it's looking like that.
Alright, then I guess this is as good a time as any to explain it to you then. The reason it looks like an orb like that is because you haven't bothered to focus your telescope, and so you're seeing the same thing you'd see if you pointed your scope at any random distant light and unfocused it all to hell. But I don't need to get deep into that, I already covered it ad nauseum in my first Donnie Daytona videos. The more interesting thing here is the line. Here's a little demonstration I did with my telescope in my house. This strange red orb is a red LED in my house. My section dividers for this video are interesting effects I achieved with multiple of these LEDs visible. I covered most of them up for the real demo. Now at this distance, each of these LEDs looks much bigger than stars actually appear from Earth. And since it's far too close, just across the room, it's impossible to get it into focus, which is good, because we're discussing the appearance of lights that are hideously out of focus. Now you should notice several important things here. Firstly, notice how the shape changes as I move the telescope, just like your orb shape changes. And secondly, notice the outline around it. This is exactly the same thing you're seeing around the edge of your Starship or orb. It's just a diffraction pattern resulting from it being out of focus. You can actually see the same kind of thing around the various lines and blobs. And as for those lines and blobs, the blobs are just out of focus dust in all different parts of the telescope. The thickest line in the lower right is a cat whisker that I put in the eyepiece on purpose. The second thickest line in the upper left is a dog hair that I also put in the eyepiece. And hair in your telescope is a possibility for what that line could be, but I doubt it. Especially given how straight and permanent it seems to be. You've been seeing it for ages, and I assume you've been packing that telescope around all over the place. Hair doesn't stick forever quite as easily as dust does. And so we come to the finest line crossing my image, the one going from top to bottom. I would guess that when you make your videos, you're using something called a star diagonal. That's a reflecting device so you can look through your telescope at a more comfortable angle. Now the reflector itself can be either a mirror or a prism. Here's what that prism looks like inside my own diagonal. Now if it's a mirror, you shouldn't see that line, but if it's a triangular prism like I have, then because light bounces around inside of it, the crisp straight line on the back can be visible when you view bright objects. And that's exactly what you're seeing across my image here. I would say that's the most probable cause of your line. Of course, during most of your video, you're digitally zoomed in, so that line ends up looking heavier than it really is. Here you can see me taking the eyepiece, which my webcam is attached to, off the star diagonal, removing the diagonal from the scope and attaching the eyepiece directly to the scope. And you'll notice that the slim line from the diagonal is now completely gone. This is how you can test too, Gina. If I'm right and you're using a star diagonal, just take it out and attach the eyepiece or your camera directly to the scope and see if that line's still there afterwards. If you're not using a diagonal, then I would say hair or something similar is the next most likely possibility. In which case, just clean out your scope.
Yeah, it's nice. You know, and if a star doesn't want you to zoom up on it, you're not going to. They will not let you.
What? Have you considered trying a different eyepiece?
As this gets nearer to the edge, it does appear like it is a great big looking orb. It would be a round orb, but I think it's the angle that I am where I live at. Now, if I was maybe further down in another town or something, I'd probably get to see this full circle instead of partial.
Or just move your telescope so the star's centered in your field of view. You almost had it before, didn't you notice? Just go a little further that way. It'll be a circle, just like this.
Oh no, it looks like it's got eyes. Look, there's the being's head in it right there. This has a being's head. I think it does. You see the being's head? You see the two eyes in it?
It looks just like it did before. Out of focus garbage with a couple of dust specks, a little atmospheric turbulence, and a bit of digital zoom noise. What pattern is your brain all of a sudden finding in this pile of nothing?
Yes, there is a being in here, and it's a big giant celestial being.
So because your telescope has dust in it, now the star is alive. Why am I even... Okay, one more bit, then we'll move on to the follow-up live stream to this, which is what I really want to cover. That's where we really start to hear about the winged being.
But if I move it over here, it kind of distorts it. But it's a full circle. It is a full circle star. How large would you guess this is? Well, I'm sure it's bigger than an airplane.
You think?
I'm not good at guessing how big the stars are.
I noticed. On to the follow-up stream. So you probably noticed that Gina didn't really seem to notice the bird or bug flying in front of the star at the time of filming it. So the next day, after she'd realized, she did another live stream just to discuss this incredible event. What is it with these people and birds? Or bugs. Screw it, I'm just gonna say bird for brevity from now on.
I don't know if every one of you have saw this video of the winged being that is came out of the crevice of this star. Some don't believe it, but I'm telling you right now, it's real.
The winged being or the video? I can confirm the video is real. It's not CGI or some stupid thing. It doesn't show a single damn thing you think it does other than a star, and even that's debatable when it's shot so poorly, but it is a real video.
This is real. It's very, very real what's happening. And if you put it in slow mode, it's easier to see when it's coming out.
It'd be a lot easier to see if you weren't filming your screen instead of just switching to a video source. Here, let me do it for you. There's your bird. Now tell me it's not a bird.
You can clearly see that this is not a bird.
Gina, I can't clearly see anything. You filmed a silhouette, terribly out of focus, with zero indication of size or distance, digitally zoomed in so far it's turned the image into mud, and on top of that, now you're recording your screen with a webcam. Here, watch what happens to Princess Leia when I do that. And you want to tell me I can clearly see through all that. So we can't clearly see what it is at all. But we know that birds and bugs fly around in the air just like that all over the place in patterns that look just like that. So unless you have some good evidence that it's not one of those things, the reasonable assumption is that it is. Why would you suddenly start believing in Starship space critters based on footage where you can't even properly see what's going on? Well, I would guess you didn't. You probably believed it first with no evidence and then took this bird as confirmation. But if you give a damn whether it's true or not, then the time to start believing it is when you set things up so you can see properly, and then you see a critter crawling out of a spaceship.
This is not a wire. I am in my side yard where there is no electrical poles or anything.
Yeah, I know it's not a wire. Why would it be a wire? That's internal to your telescope. Point your scope at any other ridiculously out of focus star. Move your scope around for a while. You'll see that line across it just the same. So it's not stationary within your environment, it's stationary within your scope. It's part of your scope. I do not understand your confusion here. You don't even need to know all that stuff I said about star diagonals or even hairs. Just applying the most basic critical thought would tell you that if it remains stationary relative to your telescope, not relative to the star or your environment, then it's part of your telescope, not part of the star or the environment. Is this really that hard to figure out? First Donnie, now you, both of you stumped by the same riddle that a little child could solve. What is going on? Jesus, maybe you guys really are getting chemtrailed into stupidity.
But we're just going to repeat this so you can see that this was a winged being. Oh, that looked like a big wing down there when it getting ready to exit.
Yeah, because it's a bird. Right.
But it is enormous.
How do you know? You have zero indicators there of the distance to that flying object. Or maybe you think you do. All right, Gina, tell me. How have you calculated, based on this footage, the distance to that bird? Or sorry, giant celestial space dragon. Or whatever. Go ahead, tell me, I'll wait.
But it is enormous. Because this star is way up there in the sky.
This is another dragon shapeshifters on the moon situation, isn't it? Okay. Seriously, what is it with you people and birds? Alright, check this out, Gina. This is gonna blow your mind. The star is way up there in the sky, I agree. Way, 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 way up there. And the bird isn't.
And this in no means could have been a bird, a bat.
Alright, a bat. So a bird, a bug, or a bat. Thanks for reminding me. I always forget about bats. Still just gonna keep saying bird for simplicity, though.
A wire. Anything of that nature.
A wire? Why would the flying thing be a wire? If someone suggested something in your video could be a wire, they were talking about the line, not the bird. I think my brain's starting to melt out my ear holes. Jesus.
This is around the 21-second mark, and you can put it in the slow mode, but it definitely has came off of this star.
Gina, it's a black silhouette flying from the black background above the star, in front of the star, and then off onto the black background to the left of the star. It flew in from the background and out again onto the background. How on earth do you interpret that as coming off the star?
I don't know if it was setting at the top or what, but it went down through the crevice from the top and then out again.
Can you see it? The brain juice running down my neck? Oh, cartoon avatar, right. That's a Patreon goal, by the way. I was filming all my videos because I was over 2,000 on Patreon for a while, but I dropped below that ages ago, but I kept filming everything despite that. But I finally decided, you know, why should I worry about filming 100% of them when I'm not even at that goal anymore? I'll probably film some here or there if I think it'll really contribute to the video. Maybe the ones I find more important or something like that. You couldn't see that. That was a shrug.
For those who are in disbelief, you do this yourself. Keep going back and looking at it. I know there's a lot of people who do not want to believe that, you know, everything is not like we've been told.
Maybe it's not, but that's still a bird.
Yeah. Looks like a bug in front of the camera to you, Olivia Stone. Well, guess what? Goodbye. Let's see, I'll hide you from the channel first. There.
There. Reality's back in its nice little box. Out of sight, out of mind.
Yeah. So that's okay, you know. I can block people on here. I can delete people. I can delete your comments because this is my channel.
We're all very impressed by your supreme power, I'm sure.
And this is very serious, what's taking place, what's going on in the skies around us.
No, what's very serious is how many people aren't testing out how their telescopes actually work before using them or applying basic reasoning to the results, and then leaping to wild, unjustified conclusions based on their ignorance.
And if you don't want to believe, if you just want to come on here and be derogatory or make fun of me or other people on this channel, and you have no place here, I will get rid of you just like that.
Sounds like all that person said is, it looks like a bug flew by, which it does. Is pointing out objective facts now derogatory? Is just mentioning the fact that there might be a more likely explanation than flying Starship space monster really the same thing as making fun of you? Seems more like you just want to filter out all the obvious explanations because you don't want to question the ridiculous conclusion you've leapt to.
It doesn't matter to me. You know, I've come too far to turn back now.
No, you haven't. It's never too late to question your beliefs. There's not a single thing standing in the way of you believing something different tomorrow than you believe today, except your own emotional attachment and pigheadedness.
And this is not a place for a person to be nonsense, acting like it's all nonsense, you know. You need to open up your eyes, open up your mind, and start believing things may not be the way you think they are or the way that you've been taught.
I know for sure that a bunch of stuff isn't the way I was taught, but I wasn't taught that that's a critter flying in front of your telescope, Gina. I'm inferring it based on seeing tons of flying animals in the past and then applying Occam's razor. I also wasn't taught that a star doesn't transform into a spaceship when you take it out of focus. You're telling people the way to open their eyes is to deny their own eyes. You're telling people the way to open their minds is to close their minds so solidly that they will deny facts they can verify by themselves in their living rooms in 5 minutes. Oh, and by the way, just because I know very well that not everything is the way I believe it is or the way I was taught, that doesn't mean I'm gonna start believing things are the way you believe they are just because you say it all dramatic-like.
Sorry about that, but you know, I have no tolerance for comments like that, either on my Facebook or on the YouTube.
I'm not having no tolerance for independent, thought-justified opinions or Occam's razor on my channel. I dictate what reality is around these parts. Close your eyes and close your mind and think what I tell you to think.
Now, sometimes people are a little bit sarcastic because that's the way they are. But, you know, when you're outright saying that looks like a bug to me, I'm going to delete you.
Hey, at least your pointless silencing of the truth ends where your channel ends. You wouldn't get so pissy about people pointing out the obvious that you throw a little false flagging tantrum, right? Or maybe you would. Who knows? I, for one, can't wait to find out.
Oh no, they're not going to detour me. If they could have done it, they would have done it way at the very, very beginning when I had what they would call a lens flares, just a lot of light refractions. They would have stopped me way back then because, you know, I was very new to this.
What do you mean by that? Let me just check out an old video for context. By old, I mean a few months ago.
That's why they've been spraying so heavily. I think this is the object that I often get in the infrared, that green object up there and the smaller object. Now to see the clouds have covered it up. That big green circle with the smaller green one. It's the Nibiru system.
So you're telling me you were new back then, in August of last year. And because you were new, you wrongly thought lens flares were planets, and people could have stopped you at that point. I only assume by pointing out that the wisest course is not necessarily to latch onto the very first emotionally appealing idea you think of in your abject technological ignorance, and then block everyone who points out how technology actually works, or in this case, the mere existence of bugs. So that means that only a few months ago, you made numerous videos with that huge of a mistake in them. A total ignorance of something as simple as lens flares. And now you're refusing to admit that you might be wrong about anything at all. So you know for a fact that you're capable of errors, ignorance, and incorrect assumptions. You had a problem with that just a few months ago. But what? You suddenly stopped caring about that? Do you think that's really the best policy if you want to believe true things instead of just becoming a fool?
But they're not going to stop me now. It doesn't matter. It does not matter. They're not going to stop me, and they're not going to stop others.
I stopped Donnie a Daytona. Sort of, partially. At the very least, I stopped him from filming out-of-focus stars and pretending they're something else like you're doing here. Because despite sharing your ideology that was pushing him to close his mind further and further, his mind was still just barely open enough to listen and realize that reality agreed with me, not him. Now granted, he's still got a lot of dumb ideas in his videos, and I might get to some of those someday. I certainly didn't stop him completely, but stopping him was never my goal, just like it's not my goal to stop you. But even so, it was a nice side effect that at least he stopped doing stuff as dumb as what you're currently doing. Nice for him, I mean. He's improved his work, and he's just a little bit less wrong than he used to be, which, contrary to popular belief, is a nice thing for anyone.
Joe Stanley, I am trying to be very vigilant because, you know, this is not a game, and it's not, I don't got time to be turning back and retreating, you know. I'm not doing that because things are happening and they're speeding up, and we need to become aware of what's occurring.
Isn't that an amazing con? Your religion's convinced you that there's this really urgent situation happening. It's so urgent you have no time to be distracted by outside contradictory information. Quick, hurry! Believe what you're told. The future of the world depends on it. Imagine being so utterly brainwashed that you would characterize changing your mind based on evidence as turning back or retreating. It's not a retreat, it's a commitment to moving towards the truth. That's the entire point of doing it. Acting like the very real issues people point out with your videos are all nonsense is not going to help you reach any truth. If you want to do that, you need to open your eyes, open your mind, and start believing things may not be the way you think they are, or the way that you've been taught. Just like last time with the lens flares.
Don't let people walk all over you and tell you that you're someone that you're not, okay? You know who you are. On the inside, you know who you are.
Then it's a good thing none of this is about you. It's not about who you are. It's about what your images are. Don't take it so personally.
And you don't have to put up with people's criticisms, their derogatory comments, their belittling of you. You don't have to put up with that because you're not a doormat. God did not make you to be a doormat, okay?
You don't have to put up with anything you don't want to put up with, but if you refuse to question things, you are going to end up a doormat. Maybe that person asked the question rudely, I don't know. I wouldn't expect a response to a video like mine. I understand that tone can have an impact, but if you refuse to even consider if maybe it really could just be a bug, maybe there's a tiny shred of possibility of that. If you refuse to even contemplate that because you've fallen for some line that some things are just too important to ever question, or the world is changing so fast and we can't waste time thinking about stuff, do you really think that makes you less easy to control and take advantage of? Do you really think that puts you at less risk of becoming a doormat? Seriously?
There is not very much truth out there for us. There really isn't.
And how is your attitude helping? Well, that's enough of that. This is another one of those channels I could talk about for decades, just like Donnie. And as you might imagine, I barely scratched the surface here. But I'm gonna stop for now and do a video on something else. Towards the start, I found this really funny, but it got kind of depressing towards the end. I definitely found a lot of comedy in her smug self-satisfaction over the existence of a block function on YouTube. Like, this is my channel, I can do whatever I want. I can block your comments, I can delete your comments. Nah, take that. It's like, yeah, that's how YouTube works. But the comedy of that wasn't enough to outweigh the fact that this is yet another instance of religion locking down a person's mind so thoroughly and throwing away the key. But hey, maybe that key's still out there somewhere, just waiting to be found. One can only hope. Anyway, if you liked the video, help me out. Give it a like, subscribe, and share it with someone. Facebook, or like Reddit, or I don't know, whatever. All of that stuff helps bring more people to the channel, and that's really helpful to me. And if you're feeling really extra helpful, I also have Patreon, Subscribestar, and PayPal links in the description. And the people who donate through that are very, very, very much appreciated. So thanks for watching. See you next time.
Not a bird, by no means. Because this star was like way up there in the sky, way up there in the sky. we're seeing what's up there, and we've got some foreknowledge of it. We've got a little bit of advance notice, you know, to prepare within your spirit. Yes, I know we're being watched up there in the sky, and I know that they can read your thoughts, even your subconscious thoughts. I know they can read that. They can tap into it if they want to. Just be aware of everything that's happening. That's what I would do. Just be aware of everything that's happening, because our world is changing so fast. It has big wings and a long body, like a human body. Like if that was its legs, like a big old angel. A humongous winged being with black wings. I don't think it's white wings, because we would have been able to see the white. We're living in that dimension. I think it's blended in with ours, and some of us are able to see it and some of us aren't. And that makes my arms look long, but my arms aren't long.